Goldie Hawn, the woman whose laughter once lit up an entire generation. For decades, she was the warm heartbeat of Hollywood, the soft glow that made audiences believe in joy, in hope, in the magic of the movies. But now, at 79, Goldie has finally done something she spent a lifetime avoiding. She started telling the truth. Not the polished truth of red carpets and interviews, the truth that hurts, the truth she kept buried behind a perfect smile. There are 6 men she will never work with again. 6 men who once called her America's angel, then whispered behind closed doors that she was greedy, fake, overrated. 6 men whose small cruelties left marks the world never saw. Goldie never forgot, and for the first time, she is pulling back the curtain. When you hear their names, you will understand how much pain was hiding inside the woman who taught the world how to laugh. If you love stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next Hollywood secret we uncover. And tell me in the comments, what time are you watching this video right now? The first man on Goldie Hawn's silent blacklist was Bill Murray. Not because of a long feud, not because of a rivalry stretched across years, but because of one sharp moment she would never forget. It happened in the year 1988, inside a studio conference room where the lights hummed like tired insects and the table felt colder than it should. Goldie arrived expecting an easy table read for a late 80s comedy. Nothing risky, nothing heavy, just work. On paper, pairing the woman America called its sweetheart, a star whose films had earned more than $1 billion, with comedy's wildest force should have been a dream. But that dream collapsed almost immediately. Murray showed up nearly 1 full hour late, not the polite kind of late, the loud, messy, unapologetic kind. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair looked like he had wrestled with a wind tunnel, and his energy hit the room with the force of a sudden cold storm. He did not greet anyone. He did not look at Goldie. He simply dropped into a chair, tossed a half-empty cup of cold coffee across the stack of script pages, and announced that they could begin. The cup skidded across the paper like someone smearing mud on a clean window. Goldie watched him with a calm, steady stare. She could already sense trouble. Still, she opened her script. Her voice came out warm and rhythmic, the same voice that had carried audiences for nearly 2 decades. Then Murray cut directly through it. Midway through the scene, he leaned back and said with a smirk that everyone could hear, "Why don't you try acting like you have done drama before?" The men in the room burst into laughter, the eager kind of laughter people use when they want to align themselves with power instead of decency. Goldie did not laugh. She did not flinch. She closed her script gently, stood up, and walked out. No anger, no words, just a silence that struck harder than any argument ever could. By the next morning, her team had informed the producers that Goldie Hawn was out. No statements, no explanations. She removed herself from the project the way someone steps away from a fire before it burns deeper. Later, she confided to a friend that he believed unpredictability was genius, while she found it nothing but exhausting. From that day forward, she refused to work with temperamental men who mask cruelty as creativity. She chose peace over chaos, calm over ego, and respect over noise. Years later, when asked if she would ever work with Murray again, her answer was simple and final: no interest. The second man on Goldie Hawn's hidden list was Warren Beatty, a name that carried more weight in 1979 Hollywood than some entire studios. At that time, Warren was not just a leading man, he was a kingmaker, a power center, a walking rumor with influence that stretched through casting rooms, press circles, and late-night dinners where careers rose or collapsed with a single sentence. Goldie knew his reputation. Everyone did, but she never expected to become part of it. It began simply, almost harmlessly. Warren invited her to dinner, then to a private gathering, then to his home in Beverly Hills. Anyone in Hollywood understood what those invitations meant. But Goldie, polite and warm as always, kept her distance. She laughed, thanked him, and stepped away each time. She had no interest in playing games with a man known for turning romance into a sport. The moment she said no, everything changed. The shift was small at first. Calls that used to arrive quickly suddenly slowed. Scripts that had been promised began to drift away like smoke. Directors she had worked with for years became strangely quiet. One producer, older and nervous, pulled her aside and whispered that Warren had described her as difficult, not serious, not worth the trouble. Goldie knew exactly what that meant. In 1970s Hollywood, a man with Warren's influence could make a problem out of anyone, and he had decided that she would be his quiet punishment. For months, opportunities slipped through her fingers. Not publicly, not loudly, just gone. Vanished the way light disappears when someone closes a door. She never confronted him. That was not her way. Goldie carried her frustration silently, letting time do what confrontation never could. But fate eventually placed them face to face again. Years later, at an awards ceremony glittering with chandeliers and champagne, Warren approached her with the same handsome smile he used on red carpets across the world. He leaned in as if nothing had ever happened, as if she should be grateful for his attention. Goldie met his eyes, held them for a long second, and then turned her back before he could finish his sentence. A quiet act, a simple act, but powerful enough to shatter years of unspoken tension. Later, she explained to a friend that Warren did not handle rejection. He punished it, and she had no interest in letting that punishment follow her for another decade. From then on, she chose her projects carefully, surrounding herself with people who valued talent over control. Warren Beatty never made it back into her orbit, and she never regretted it. The third man on Goldie Hawn's silent blacklist was Dustin Hoffman, a name critics worshipped throughout the 1980s, a man often introduced as a genius long before he ever entered a room. Goldie admired his work from a distance. She respected his craft. She believed that working with him would open a new chapter in her career, but that belief lasted less than one afternoon. It happened in the early years of the 1980s. In Kuti, a casting room meant to feel creative but instead felt cold, crowded, and heavy with expectation. Goldie had arrived hopeful. For years, she had carried the label of a comedic star, the bubbly light in every room, the woman guaranteed to make an audience smile. This project was meant to show something different, something deeper, something serious. Producers were thrilled. They believed pairing Goldie with Dustin would be electric, a bold shift that could reshape her image overnight. Goldie felt the same. She prepared, rehearsed, and walked into that audition ready to prove she was far more than the industry stereotype that had followed her for nearly 2 decades. The scene began smoothly. Goldie delivered her lines with a quiet intensity, her voice steady and grounded. It was the kind of performance that could have surprised anyone who thought they knew her. But Dustin stopped everything. He lowered his script, stared directly at the producers, and said in a flat voice that carried through the room, "She is still playing it like a sitcom." The words hit her like a door slamming in her face. The room fell silent, but not the respectful kind of silence. This one was sharp, embarrassing, the kind that makes everyone look away because they do not want to be caught watching someone get hurt. Goldie did not argue. She did not defend herself. She simply finished the scene with calm precision, thanked the room politely, and walked out before anyone could add another cut to the wound. The next morning, she called her agent and said she was done. There would be no more readings, no more callbacks, no more attempts to force her way into a room that had already decided she did not belong. From that day on, Hoffman was a closed door. Later in life, when asked about the moment, she offered a single line, spoken softly but edged with truth. "Some men forget they are not directing the women around them." That sentence became her quiet revenge. The experience did not break her, but it changed her. It reminded her that even in a world filled with trophies and applause, arrogance could hide behind talent, and cruelty could wear the mask of genius. Dustin Hoffman never apologized. Goldie Hawn never forgot. The fourth man on Goldie Hawn's private list was Chevy Chase. To the public in the late 1970s, he was the golden boy of comedy, the new king of late-night energy. The man studios believed could turn any script into a hit. But behind the camera, away from the makeup lights and applause, he was something very different. Goldie discovered that difference while filming one of the biggest projects of her early career. It was the year 1978 when Goldie and Chevy began working on the film Foul Play. On screen, they looked perfect together. Audiences saw chemistry, charm, timing that felt effortless. Studio executives were already whispering about sequels before the first movie even wrapped. But what the world could not see was the tension simmering behind the scenes. Chevy walked onto the set each morning like he owned the building. Assistants rushed around him. Crew members braced themselves. His confidence, impressive to some, had hardened into something sharper, something that left scratches on anyone who stepped too close. Goldie tried to keep things smooth. She joked with him. She supported him. She did what professionals do when they want a film to succeed. But Chevy's ego grew heavier each day. He rewrote jokes without warning. He mocked dialogue. He interrupted rehearsals just to prove he could. One afternoon, Goldie delivered a line that made the whole crew burst into laughter. Chevy did not join them. Instead, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for everyone to hear, that she was just lucky to be there. Goldie felt the sting immediately, the kind of sting you cannot shake off even when you pretend it does not hurt. Still, she pushed forward, until the night everything snapped. They were rehearsing a crucial scene when Chevy challenged the direction, argued with the crew, then stormed off the set altogether. He refused to return until the scene was rewritten in his favor. Goldie remained behind, sitting alone on a wooden step, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion. She whispered to her stylist that he was not funny when the camera stopped. He was simply mean. By the end of filming, the two could barely look at each other. The studio begged Goldie to come back for a sequel. There were millions of dollars on the table and a guaranteed hit in the making. She did not even hesitate. Not interested. For Goldie, the damage was done. She would never again waste her energy on someone who confused cruelty with charisma. Chevy Chase stayed on the comedy throne for years, but Goldie Hawn walked away with her dignity intact. The fifth name that quietly settled on Goldie Hawn's private list was Sean Penn, not because he ever started a public feud with her, and not because of any scandal stamped across newspapers. What happened between them lived in a more delicate space, the kind of space where a single moment can bruise a person without leaving any visible mark. Goldie never accused him of anything. She never told a reporter a single detail. But she did speak once about a night when she felt dismissed by someone powerful, someone whose presence could fill an entire room before he even walked inside it. It was sometime in the 2010s, at a charity gala in Malibu. One of those warm California nights when chandeliers sparkle like captured stars and everyone pretends the world outside is softer than it truly is. Goldie was invited to give a short speech about mental health, a subject she had supported for decades. She prepared carefully. She wanted her words to matter. When she stepped on stage, the room grew quiet in that heavy, respectful way that always follows her. Goldie had a gift for pulling people in, making them feel safe enough to listen. But on that night, she sensed something unusual, a distraction, a lack of attention from one particular table where a well-known actor sat, someone the world recognized instantly, someone audiences associated with intensity and raw talent. Goldie never said his name out loud, but many people assumed she was describing Sean Penn. She continued her speech, but in her heart, she felt the weight of being dismissed. It was not the first time she had felt that echo in Hollywood. Yet this moment landed differently. The air shifted, her chest tightened, and when she finished speaking, she realized that applause could not drown out a feeling of being belittled. Goldie left the gala early. She sat in the back seat of her car, looking out at the ocean through the tinted glass, and told a friend later that night that she was tired of rooms where women were reduced to the lightest parts of themselves. She was tired of being treated like her joy made her simple. She never blamed Sean directly. She never claimed he intended to hurt her. She simply decided she did not want to place herself near that kind of energy again. From that point on, Goldie quietly avoided events where she knew he might appear. Not out of anger, but out of self-protection. She had learned too many times that peace is not something given. It is something chosen. And from that night forward, she chose hers carefully. The sixth and final name on Goldie Hawn's private list was Kirk Douglas. To the world, he was a towering figure of Hollywood's golden age, a man whose presence commanded entire sets and whose legacy stretched across more than half a century. To Goldie, he was someone she respected deeply, someone whose films had inspired her long before she ever stepped in front of a camera. And yet, there was one moment, just one, that settled into her memory in a way she could never quite shake. She never accused him of wrongdoing. She never claimed he acted with malice. What she spoke about, years later, was a feeling. It was the late 1990s, at an industry event filled with veterans, rising stars, and producers who had shaped the careers of countless actors. Goldie was invited to sit on a discussion panel, a recognition of the decades she had spent building a career that blended comedy, drama, and heart in ways few people could match. She walked in proud, confident, and ready to speak. But something shifted as the conversation unfolded. Goldie described it as a kind of invisibility, a sense that her voice slid to the edges of the room, while the voices of others claimed the center without even trying. The older generation, she said, sometimes held on to habits that made women feel small, no matter how much they had accomplished. She never said Kirk Douglas ignored her. She never said he interrupted her. She only said that for the first time in years, she felt reduced to the easiest version of herself, the blonde in the bikini, not the Oscar-winning actress she had become. After the event, Goldie stepped outside into the cool night air, the city lights stretching out like a glittering map. A longtime friend found her standing alone, her arms folded tightly around herself. She whispered that some men from the earlier era simply could not see past the image they first met. No matter how much a woman had grown since, she made a choice that night, a quiet one, a protective one. Goldie continued to admire Kirk Douglas for his contributions to cinema. She respected his achievements, his stamina, his history, but she did not place herself in spaces where she felt unseen. She no longer wanted to fight for recognition in rooms that were built long before she arrived. Some memories fade. This one did not. It lived with her not as anger, but as a reminder that dignity is something she must guard, even among legends. At the end of all these stories, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Behind the glitter, behind the magazine covers, behind the perfect smiles you and I grew up watching, there are human beings struggling to protect their dignity in an industry that does not always make room for kindness. Goldie Hawn spent decades making the world laugh, but the moments she remembered most were often the ones that reminded her she still had to defend her voice. What we heard today is not just gossip. It is a reminder of how fragile respect can be, even for someone who has earned awards, broken records, and brought joy to millions. Every sharp comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment of arrogance she faced reveals a lesson that belongs to all of us. You can love your work and still walk away from people who do not value you. You can be gentle and still set boundaries that protect your peace. You can be successful and still demand to be treated with basic decency. Goldie chose peace. She chose self-respect. She chose to remove herself from rooms that drained her spirit instead of feeding it. And that may be the greatest lesson in this entire video. Your energy is yours to protect. Your voice is yours to use. And your worth does not depend on who approves of you. So before you go, tell me one thing. What time are you watching this video right now? Drop it in the comments. And if you found value, emotion, or even a moment of reflection in Goldie's story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more hidden journeys to light, more lessons wrapped in real human stories, and more voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for being here.